Oh, yeah. No,
Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Eastern Planning Committee on Wednesday, the 8th of October 2025. I'm Councillor David Took, Chair of this committee. My Vice Chair is Councillor Sally House. Meeting is being live streamed and will be available to view on the Council's website. And by attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting. To members of the committee today. We have two applications to determine today. Planning officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak, the Democratic Services Officer, before the deadline to address the committee in the following order: public against, public support, applicant or agent, town and parish council, and ward members. Each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes. Kill the echo. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak with the Democratic Services Officer before the deadline. Address the committee in the following order: public against, public support, applicant or agent, town and parish council, and ward member. Each speaker has maximum 3 minutes. Following on from the registered speakers, the planning officers will have the opportunity to address any salient points to clarify. The committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officers before moving on to their debate. At the end of the debate, we'll take a vote and I will declare the decision of the committee. And I remind members that when we go into councillor questions and debate, please state your name and ward for the benefit of the public watching and speak directly into the microphones so we can all hear you. If anyone is using Teams, please ensure you're on mute and your device volume is set to 0. Before we begin, just a few points regarding general housekeeping. We're not expecting a fire alarm during today's meetings. However, should the alarm sound, please leave the building calmly and without delay, using the nearest fire exits, which are located at the side of the room. The meeting will be formally adjourned at that point and will only resume once it is confirmed safe to do so. The officers involved in today's meeting include Tim Cowell, as our Eastern Area Manager, Development Management, Elizabeth Adams, who will be along a little bit later, Thomas Wild, who's the Lead Project Officer, Amy Shinkins, who's the Lead Project Officer, Suzanne Hetherington, who is the Transport Development Liaison Manager, Anna Massey, who is our legal representative, and Megan Rochester, the Senior Democratic and Governance Officer, and Joshua Kennedy, who is a democratic and governance officer. We have Chris McDermott as well, who is our housing officer. Can I ask Josh, have we had any apologies for absence?
Thank you. Yes, we've had an apology for absence today from Councillor Alex Brenton.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have a declaration of interest they want to make at this stage, or if anything comes up, please let us know. Okay. And can we confirm the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 24th of September, which I think has circulated? Any objections to those? No? Members of the public who are registered to speak can choose to speak either now or after the presentation of the item that they're registered on. Does anybody wish to speak now? Are you all content to wait until presentation?
We'll listen to the case first, please.
Say again?
Certainly, we would like to listen to the case first, please, and then speak afterwards.
Okay. So that moves us to the first substantive item on the agenda, which is item 5, which is 6/2021/0282 land east of Wareham Road, Litchfield and Travers, which will be presented to us by Jenkins.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm just loading up the presentation. Sorry, my mouse isn't on the right screen. Where's it going? Sorry. Got it. Okay, again, thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. This is an application for full planning permission for 95 houses on land east of Wareham Road. The application is presented at committee for a member decision where the parish council have raised an objection that is contrary to the officer recommendation. And the following presentation is about 55 slides. They are numbered at the top, so please refer to the numbering of the slide if you have any questions at the end of the presentation. Just to update, the officer report published for the September 3rd committee, when this item was initially supposed to be heard, is superseded by this October committee report that's been published. There have been some minor changes where some typos need to be amended and some additional information about allocated sites and the annual position statements were also added to the officer report. And also to note the officer recommendation at the very end of the officer report, where it's part B in terms of the amount of time for the 106 to be agreed, should be 6 months. The date on that is the 3rd of February, because that was from the September committee. That needs to be updated to the 8th of March in that part of the recommendation. In terms of location and context, this slide shows the indicative location of the site within the Eastern Committee area. This slide shows the application site in relation to Litchfield and Travers. We can see that it's to the south of the village, but to the north of the Glebe Road residential area, residential road. And the school is located just to the north and the main village area to the north also. The slide shows the extent of the application site outlined in red, showing the west and east fields. And on the following slide, I have some photographs which are for the views identified in this slide. So some of the views identified, we've got the frontage to Wareham Road. We have the number 2 is the Westfield view. Number 3 is a view of the property zone Glebe Road from the site. And number 4 are the trees and some of the trees and hedgerows within the site. And this is a view of the Purbex from the site itself. So the application site, this slide shows the site and some of its constraints and opportunities. This includes the existing bus stops on Wareham Road, we can see here, the existing access and the potential access as proposed. We have existing trees and vegetation again around the boundaries, as we can see again on the slide, and there's some existing wetlands and watercourses also within the site to the east. Existing infrastructure such as sewers, power lines, and the Glebe Road pumping station are also shown on the slide. And this slide also highlights the topography of the site, where we can see it slopes more in the eastern part of the site. So in terms of the site history, the site is an allocated site under policy H6 of the Purbeck local plan that was adopted in 2024. The allocation requires 95 new homes on land east of Wareham Road to the south of the village. And there's also 2 other sites, which includes 25 homes on land at Blaney's Corner and around 30 homes on land east of Flowers Grove, which are these 2 sites identified to the north. Applications for Flowers Grove and Blaney's Corner are currently under consideration by officers. In terms of the proposed developments, again, this is a full application for 95 houses. It's for residential development for 95 dwellings, new vehicular and pedestrian access onto Wareham Road, and other associated works, including landscaping and open space. This slide highlights the mix of dwellings and open space to be provided. Open space includes a local area for play and also an equipped area for play and drainage ponds and wetland area to the east. This slide shows the concept sketch showing the informal arrival area here to in the west of the site, and also the frontages of the dwellings looking onto the main circulation and the other open space across the site. Here we have the land use across the site, comprising of the residential areas in pink and the open space in green and the circulation in grey. This slide shows the house types, which are 1 to 5 bedroom dwellings, and their distribution across the site. And just for examples of house types, this is an example of a 2-bed dwelling. Here we have a 3-bed dwelling and a 2-bed house. An example of a 4-bed house, and another example of a 2-bed dwelling. And this shows a similar house type in an existing development by the developer of that particular house type. And this is another 4-bed, and again another build version on another site, albeit slightly different materials for the one that's proposed on the The slide shows an indicative street scene showing the various house types together, and this is the entrance to Wareham Road. And this slide shows an indicative street scene within the site itself. We have an artist's impression of the site entrance, again from Wareham Road, obviously. And this is a view of the proposed houses from the proposed open space that will be located to the east of the site. So in terms of local representations, the application was advertised by site notice in September 2021 and July 2025. There were 249 objections received, and a brief summary of concerns raised are set out on this slide. There is a more detailed summary in the officer report, and full comments are available online. But just to note, some of the concerns include highway safety and congestion, impact on infrastructure, location, density, flood risk, and some concerns with designs. But again, full comments available online and a more detailed summary in the officer report. There's also some comments of support I set out in the slide. So support for new houses to be built, and was considered to be a good design and in keeping with the surrounding area. So the consultee responses, no objections was received from consultees in general, as you can see on this slide and the following slide. However, there is an objection from the Litchfield-Travis Parish Council as set out in the officer report. And again, no objection from these consultees, and some comments from Wessex Water and the Southern Gas Network, but no objections raised. In terms of the principle of the development, this planning application proposes the erection of new dwellings on an allocated site under policy H6 of the Perfect Local Plan, where the principle of development is acceptable, subject to accordance with other local and national planning policy. H6 advises around 95 homes on the land to the east of Wareham Road should be provided. And as set out in the officer report, the application site does form part of the current confirmed 5-year housing land supply, which forms part of our annual position statement. Concerns have been raised that the proposed site does not meet the requirements of the Litchfield Travis neighbourhood plan. The neighbourhood plan does not identify sites for development, but it does recognise potential release of greenbelt land within Appendix B of the plan, as shown on this slide. And also, while it's not an allocated site in the neighbourhood plan, officers consider it meets the development management policies that are set out in that neighbourhood plan in paragraph 1.5, as I've assessed in paragraph 1.5 and 1.6 of the officer report. Concerns have also been raised that the proposed is within greenbelt land. Just to point out, policy V2 of the Perfect Local Plan does amend the greenbelt boundaries to allow for policy H6 allocations, as you can see on this slide. In terms of the housing mix, the proposed development will provide 40% affordable homes as required by policy H11 of the Perfect Local Plan. The policy H11 also sets out a tenure mix, but notes that they can be varied for specific sites under specific circumstances. Due to increased building costs and the need for nutrient mitigation, which wasn't considered under the local plan viability, in order to ensure policy compliant affordable housing delivery of 40%, it has been necessary to amend the proposed tenure mix in consultation with the Dorset Council Housing Officer. So of the 38 affordable homes, these will be provided on site as 10% social for rent, which is set out in policy as well. Policy requires 10%. 40% affordable for rent homes and 50% shared ownership homes. So the proposed tenure mix is considered acceptable and it has been agreed with the Dorset Council Housing Officer. The proposed housing mix in terms of the number of bedrooms per dwelling also varies slightly from the recommendation in the local plan. Again, policy H9 notes the final mix should be agreed with the applicant and the council's housing team. So we have consulted the housing team on the proposed mix as well as the tenure proposed for affordable housing, and it has been agreed to the housing officer has agreed to the proposed mix, and the housing provision is considered to be acceptable in terms of policies H6, H9 and H11 of the adopted local plan. In terms of scale and layout, dwellings are 2 stories and garages are generally single story. However, there are some 1.5 story garages with home offices as highlighted in green on the plan, which we can see to the west of the site. Dwellings have been positioned set back from public footpaths to ensure that all dwelling plots have defensible space to the front. A mixture of on-plot and some on-street parking is proposed, where on-street parking is for visitors. And in general, the proposed scale and layout is considered acceptable and in accordance with local plan policy 12 and section 12 of the NPPF. In terms of highways and parking, access is provided from Wareham Road, close to the existing access, as we can see here. This slide shows the circulation hierarchy within the development. Third-party concerns have been raised in relation to access, traffic congestion and highway safety. And the Dorset Council Highways officers have been consulted and they've raised no objection on highway safety grounds subject to conditions. This slide shows the street section for primary streets and it shows sufficient space for cars, cycling and footpath with a carriageway of 5.5 and footpath proposed at 2 metres wide. And in terms of parking, a total allocated provision of 274 spaces are provided, which does include garages. And this is broken down as 193 allocated parking spaces within curtilages, 62 garages, which meet the space requirements for parking, 19 visitor spaces, and cycle sheds will be provided for houses without garages. The road layout will also allow for informal on-street car parking to occur, and the overall provision compares favourably to the recommended Dorset Council guidance and calculator, which for these housing types suggests 180 spaces and 20 visitor spaces. So, albeit short one visitor space, but there is an over provision of spaces within allocated spaces for the dwellings themselves. In terms of highways improvements, they are proposed as part of the development. This includes improvements to the adjacent bus stops and the footpaths along the edge of the development. So the bus stop improvements include a bus curb to be installed and a drop curb and tactile paving for the crossing opposite. The existing footpath is to be widened to a consistent 2 metres. Also, the existing hedge along Wareham Road will be removed and new hedging planted behind the footpath to ensure that 2 metre footpath on the highway. And these improvements are required by condition prior to the occupation of the development. In terms of appearance, so the proposed architecture is similar to that of other new developments in the surrounding area. It is considered to be of a high quality style that relates to the existing local character. The proposed materials include brick, render, slate, tile, timber, and concrete detailing as set out on this slide. And the Dorset Council Urban Design and Landscape Officers have been consulted and raised no objection to the proposed, subject to additional landscaping details and a materials plan condition. There are a number of proposed house types on the site that create a variation in architectural design and visual interest. There's a good mix of dwelling types with a couple of apartments, terraces, semi-detached houses and detached houses. The site layout shows that units are distributed across the site to include a higher density of predominantly terraced and semi-detached at the core of the site, which then peters out to towards the edge to include a higher proportion of detached units. So that's as you're moving towards the west of the site and the frontage as well. The proposed layout and design are considered to address the Purbeck District Design Guide, where it is required to reflect and reinforce local distinctive characteristics, use traditional patterns and forms of development, and make creative use of local materials in contemporary design. In terms of landscaping and trees, a landscape strategy plan and supporting strategy document have been submitted. This plan has been amended in consultation with the Dorset Council Urban Design and Landscape Officers to achieve a suitable design where landscaping was increased as requested by officers. Additional landscaping details are required and these will be secured by condition. And this slide shows the landscaping strategy showing periphery landscaping and the arrival space, the main public space to the east, and the provision of ornamental planting to frontages of dwellings as well. There is existing vegetation to the peripheries, some of which include protected trees. Vegetation trees are generally retained with additional planting provided as shown on the next slide. However, some hedging is to be removed from the frontage, again, as I mentioned, in terms of highways, improving footway here, and also to the middle of the site. I'll discuss this later under biodiversity as well. So the tree officer is content that protected trees in general are retained, but has raised concerns about the A category oak, which is incorporated into the residential gardens of plot 57 and 58, which is highlighted with the red circle. The tree officer has suggested a condition removing permitted development rights for these specific plots to ensure any future developments, such as small extensions or outbuildings, etc., fully consider this tree and the rooting environment of this tree. And this condition and the other requested tree conditions have been included in the officer report. The proposed tree planting strategy is set out in this plan and no objection has been raised by the Dorset Council Landscape Officer, and full planting details are to be secured by condition. In terms of boundary treatments, we'll have brick walling, post and rail fencing, or planting are proposed for plot boundaries that join the public realm. And closed board timber fencing will be used between rear or side gardens and along the southern boundary, and the proposed boundary treatments are considered acceptable. In terms of the public open space, the public open space is provided throughout the proposed development, as you can see in this slide, and this includes the edge spaces, the arrival space, the open space frontages, formal play space, and what the applicant refers to as the rural edge to the east. The arrival space is located to the west, and the indicative design is shown on this slide. The design details and maintenance are secured by condition and legal agreement. And the locally equipped area for play, or the LEAP as I'll refer to it, is proposed as part of the open space to the east. Again, design details are secured by condition and legal agreement, and the delivery of the LEAP will also be secured by legal agreements and will include the maintenance details. In terms of amenity, so concerns have been raised the proposed will impact on neighbouring amenity, particularly in terms of overlooking. Existing dwellings are located to the northwest and the south of the proposed development. Separation distances of back-to-back, which is proposed to existing, are 10 to 15 metres from proposed dwellings to their neighbouring boundary, and side-facing proposed dwellings avoid windows to side elevations or if they are required, they would be obscure glazed. Specific concerns have been raised with regards to the impact on Glebe Road residents, in particular back-to-back relationships. Proposed dwellings are approximately 10 to 15 metres from the neighbouring boundaries, and the back-to-back property distances are approximately 20 to 29 metres. While the proposed dwellings may be at a higher level than the existing dwellings on Glebe Road, as you can see in this section on the slide here, the proposed separation distances are sufficient not to impact on neighbouring amenity to an extent that would warrant refusal, regardless in the change of ground level. Also, this type of back-to-back relationship and separation distances are not uncommon in a residential context. Specific concerns have been raised with regards to plot 32 and the relationship to the existing dwelling on Glebe Road. A revised plan was submitted in August 2025, which moves the proposed approximately 1 metre further from the neighbouring dwelling and slightly reorientated to try to address concerns that were raised. While the proximity to the boundary in the existing dwelling is noted, the design and orientation of the proposed dwelling is such that it prevents overlooking where there are no windows to the side elevations facing the existing property. The orientation ensures first floor windows do not directly overlook neighbouring properties, and also ensures that oblique views are also quite difficult. The height of the proposed dwelling is approximately 5 metres to the eaves here and 9 metres to the ridge. And this is the standard 2-storey dwelling. And the relationship to the existing dwelling on Glebe Road is not unacceptable in a residential context. The setback in orientation reduces the impact of the height and is not considered to impact on neighbouring amenity to an extent that would warrant refusal. In terms of biodiversity, the application site lies within 5 kilometres of the Dorset Heathland and Poole Harbour protected sites. It has been necessary to undertake an appropriate assessment for the implications for these protected sites. The appropriate assessment has concluded that mitigation measures can prevent adverse impacts on integrity of the protected sites. And these mitigation measures include sill payments, the SANG provision at Flowers Drove, as you can see on the slide here, and that forms part of the requirement for the H6 allocation. It also, other mitigation measures, particularly for nutrients, include a fallow land management plan and the purchasing of nutrient credits. So Natural England have been consulted on the appropriate assessments, and they have raised no objection to the proposed, subject to securing this mitigation, and the mitigation is secured by legal agreement. The Dorset Council Natural Environment team, they have reviewed the ecology on the site, and there is a natural environment team endorsed biodiversity mitigation enhancement plan that's dated the 7th of July 2025. The proposed does result in the loss of some hedging as highlighted in the slide. So again, to the front of the site and towards the east of the site. But this hedging is not considered significant in terms of biodiversity as agreed with the natural environment team. So just in terms of biodiversity net gain, the application was submitted in 2019, which predates the introduction of biodiversity net gain, and therefore the biodiversity net gain is not applicable. The proposal is considered acceptable in relation to biodiversity and impact on protected sites, and that is subject to condition and the completion of the legal agreement to secure the mitigation measures I mentioned on the previous slide. In terms of servicing, it is proposed that refuse collection and servicing would be curbside collection for all dwellings, and the proposed layout allows for curbside collection to all units. The slide shows how the bin collection proposed meets the Dorset Waste Services guidelines with full distances at a maximum of 10 metres for operators and 30 metres for residents. And the Dorset Waste Services were consulted and raised no objection to the proposed service and collection. In terms of drainage, the site falls within a flood zone 1. The site is mostly free from theoretical risk of pluvial flooding, apart from a strip along the eastern edge. The site is not within a ground surface water risk area, and the proposed drainage includes sustainable urban drainage systems to the east of the site in the form of a wetland, as we can see here, and the pond located here. Given the level changes I mentioned previously to the east, gabions are proposed as part of the drainage system to allow for additional amenity and flexible use of the pond, as you can see in these sections. The Dorset Council Lead Flood Authority has been consulted and advised based on additional information submitted as requested. They have no objection to the proposed subject to condition. The Environment Agency were also consulted, but no response was received. And the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with policy E4 of the private local plan. In terms of obligations, as set out in the officer reports and this slide, there are a number of obligations are required, and these include the affordable housing provision, education contributions, the doctor surgery contributions, public right-of-way contributions, open space requirements, and nutrient neutrality requirements. And these have all been agreed and will be secured by legal agreement. In terms of conditions, as set out in the officer report, a number of conditions are required to ensure the scheme is acceptable, and these are set out on this slide. We have our standard plans, conditions, and the expiration of the permission, normally which is 3 years. Pre-commencement for drainage, construction management, tree protection, nutrient mitigation, and access for construction. The damp-proof course, pre-damp-proof course level for landscaping details and the materials details. Pre-occupation conditions for drainage management, road layouts, visibility displays, bus stop and footway improvements, tactile paving, the requirement for a travel plan, the implementation of the biodiversity plan, renewable energy requirements, and the requirement for water efficiency. And in terms of compliance conditions, the M4 layout compliance, which is the building regulations, accessible dwellings requirements, which we've secured by condition on this site. And other conditions include contaminated land, construction hours, and to remove the permitted development rights of plots 57 and 58. So in summary, all matters are considered acceptable, mostly subject to condition as set out on this slide. And the officer recommendation is for approval, subject to the agreement of Section 106, or if the Section 106 can't be agreed, that would lead to refusal within, and the timescales for the Section 106, as I mentioned in the update, are 6 months from the date of this committee. Unless agreed otherwise with the head of planning. And that concludes the presentation.
Excuse me. Thank you, Naomi. Got some public speakers on this. First objector is Naomi Picard. Naomi, if you go to the small desk there, there's a microphone. There's a little button at the bottom, on the right.
Yeah.
You press that, you're live. You've got 3 minutes from when you start, and you get a 30-second warning of us share. Okay.
Thank you.
Away you go.
Good morning. I am representing the residents of Glebe Road where I live. For those who do not know, this is the road immediately to the south of the proposed development site. We object to the lack of natural screening on the plans to prevent overlooking of Glebe Road properties. Not all the houses would be more than 10 metres from our boundaries. Some would be much closer. And the gradient of the land cannot be ignored either. There is a 4-metre difference in height from our properties to the top of the development site. As a result, we would be very significantly overlooked. We would be left with entirely no private space at all, as the new houses would look directly into our gardens and our ground floor habitable rooms. We feel we should be entitled to keep at least some privacy. Many residents have spoken to me about how anxious they are about this issue, as the overlooking would significantly reduce their quality of life. It would be hugely invasive. The solution we feel we all need is to have a green corridor of mature trees alongside the entire border with Glebe Road. There appear to be plenty of trees elsewhere on the plan, but where the existing properties will be affected most, on our border, there are surprisingly few, just 7, in fact, which is completely insufficient to provide any kind of screening. A green corridor such as this would go a long way towards reducing overlooking of our ground floor rooms at least. Planting more trees would also have a multitude of other benefits too. We cannot forget that up until recently, this was greenbelt land, and building on this will result in a loss of biodiversity. Providing a green corridor along the border would help to mitigate this loss at the site rather than at some distant location. It would allow for the continued safe movement of wildlife such as bats, of which we have lots, from one end of the site to the other. Trees also help to reduce pollution and noise. They can reduce flooding and give us clean air. Providing a green corridor would send a very positive message that the council is serious about its aims to tackle climate change, and that they will not risk the health and happiness of our residents and wildlife in which to do so. Large-scale developments such as this in Litchfield Travers risk affecting its rural character. Planting green corridors could help maintain the rural feel of the village and set a good precedent for future developments in the area. This should not just be about finding homes for new residents. This should be about securing a positive future for our existing communities.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Got one more, well, some more public speakers. The next one is Andrew Carmichael. Andrew Carmichael. Apparently not. Okay. Deborah Small. Yes, on. That's ready for you.
Good morning. I'm also representing the residents of Glebe Road where I live. Further to Naomi's comments, the other issue that Glebe Road residents are very concerned about is the new development that would increase flooding to our properties. There is an existing problem with flooding of Glebe Road caused by surface water runoff at times of very heavy rainfall. This is exacerbated by the proposed site being both elevated above and significantly sloping towards Glebe Road. Most residents with homes bordering the proposed site already experience flooding, and we need strong reassurance that measures will be put in place to ensure the runoff and flooding will not degenerate further if these dwellings are to be built. Since we are not experts in drainage, we feel we would need further explanation and consultation of any drainage systems that would be put in place should the development go ahead. Naomi has mentioned the planting of trees the length of the site border with Glebe Road. A green corridor of trees like this would also provide and assist natural flood protection. Another point of objection is that the site is not in a sustainable location. It is situated too far from both the centre of the village and village amenities to be considered sustainable. Having lived at the location for many years, it is too far to walk to the centre of the village on a regular basis. With 95 more houses, there could potentially be at least 190 more cars driving up to the village centre, as the bus service that runs is entirely inadequate. If these plans go ahead, planting more trees on site would again help to absorb some of that extra pollution that may be generated. The last point I would like to raise is that the development would inevitably result in an increase in people walking along Wareham Road, and particularly to the primary school. The pavement on Wareham Road that runs alongside the site is currently so narrow that one must walk along it in single file only, and if passing one another, has to step directly into the road. This fact, coupled with the speed with which people drive along this road, creates an area of real danger, and we fear for our children's safety. It would therefore be a necessity for the pavement to be widened and traffic calming measures to be introduced. Planting a green corridor along the southern boundary of the site will provide a safe route for children to reach the designated play areas. More children than just the new residents would also likely need safe passage to reach this from Wareham Road. In summary, introducing a green corridor along the southern boundary of the site would reduce surface water runoff, reduce pollution, and provide a safe route for pedestrians to access the recreational areas. I would also ask that it be noted that although none of our parish councillors have been able to attend today, they echo every point that both Naomi and I have made. Thank you.
Thank you. The agent, Tim Hoskins.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Tim Hoskinson, Planning Director for Wyatt Homes. For those of you who don't know Wyatt Homes, we're a Dorset-based house builder with a proud track record of delivering high-quality developments. Our development just up the road from here at Rivers Edge is a good example. We take the same commitment to design, quality and placemaking across all of our sites. The land at east of Wareham Road at Litcham and Travers is no exception. We have friends, family and employees who live in Litcham and Travers, and we take this personally. We're not a large PLC writing standard designs. We have tailored our approach to the design of this site to ensure that it's in keeping with the village and will deliver sustainable development that stands the test of time. As you'll see from the planning application, the proposed development sits comfortably with the built form of the village, located between existing developed areas to the north and south, and with the school just a few minutes walk away. The layout's been designed to create an attractive frontage to Wareham Road, with a new tree and hedgerow planting to maintain the green character. Coming into the site from Wareham Road, the layout features an arrival green space with housing fronting onto it. The homes within the site have been designed to reflect the local vernacular, with two-storey cottage-style homes arranged around streets, greens and drives, with varied building heights and features such as gables, bay windows, porches, chimneys, boundary walls, hedgerows and trees to create interest. At the eastern end of the site, a large public accessible green space will provide play, recreation, biodiversity and water management benefits, as well as a soft edge towards the countryside beyond. The proposals are for a mix of house types, sizes and tenures that will meet a range of housing needs and have been tailored towards meeting local housing needs. This includes 40% affordable housing provision, which will provide a mix of rent and shared ownership homes for local residents. These will meet national space standards and will exceed the council's targets for accessible and adaptable homes. All of the homes will be built to high standards of energy efficiency in line with emerging future home standards and will incorporate heat pumps, solar panels, high levels of thermal insulation, energy efficient appliances and EV charging points. These measures will significantly reduce running costs for residents as well as helping to tackle climate change. The development would also facilitate the delivery of the Sanger Flowers Grove, which would provide 19 acres of attractive countryside on the edge of the Flowers to be used for informal recreation. The Sanger was approved by the planning committee in 2021 with the specific purpose of serving this and other allocated sites within the village. In conclusion, we feel that this is a well-considered planning application on an allocated site that will deliver much needed market and affordable homes, including a policy compliant level of affordable housing provision. We endorse your officer's report and respectfully request that members support this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoskins. We've got one more speaker, who's the local ward member and also council. That's Councillor Andy Starr. I just request a pause for a moment. Wait one on it. Sorry about that. We'll off you.
Brilliant, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you. Good morning. I'm the council. My name's Andrew Starr. I'm one of the Dorset councillors for this ward. I hope you've all read the comments from the parish council by Councillor Ken Morgan, a man far more experienced in planning than I will ever be, but made some very good points, which I agree with. I would like to pick up on something slightly different. My fellow councillors and I have been looking at ways to encourage pupils to cycle to Litchfield school. This school serves both Upton and Litchfield travellers, whereas good numbers of Upton pupils cycle, very few from Litchfield travellers do, due to the speed of the main road going down there. It's very, very unsafe. That's the Hunting Road. There is an alternative route via the recently resurfaced bridle path that comes off Fox Hills Road and meets the brand new cycle lane. Brand new, been there for about 3 or 4 weeks, I think. And put in for this purpose to link up with that bridle path. That will take the pupils straight to the school entrance, completely away from the traffic. What this development needs is a cycle path that cuts across to Fox Hills Road, which is not very far, almost opposite the bridle path, and that would link up up the cycle path and then on to the school in a safe manner. There's no provision for safe routes to school that's being considered in this application, I believe. And also, it is very much disjointed from the rest of the village because there's only the one exit, and it's either, if you're on a bike, you've got to turn right and go up the busy road and then turn across the traffic again to turn right to go on all the way around. There was a bike path that could link up to Fox Hills Road. It would make that journey much safer and much quicker, and it would serve not just children going to school, it would serve the public in general. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Now, Mr. Councillor Stallings. Thanks, Randy. Have we got any responses to any of those boxes? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to everyone who's made comments in relation to the application. I know Mr. Picard and Ms. Small submitted comments directly in terms of in relation to the consultation response. So I have been subject to these comments and include they were part of my officer assessment. Just to come back on some of the points, the back-to-back measurements are 10 to 15 metres. There are some, just on Ms. Picard's point, there are some dwellings that are side-facing, which are closer, but they don't have windows overlooking to cause an issue with overlooking and lack of privacy. I did set out in the slide the separation distances and the section, so that's for members. I'm happy to answer further questions on that matter. There is some existing vegetation on Glebe Road, so it's not just within residents or existing residents' boundaries. So it's not just the trees that are being proposed by the developer here. There is some existing vegetation. In terms of Ms. Small's comments in relation to flood risk, the drainage, as I showed on previous slides, runs from west to east as proposed, and it goes to the wetlands and the pond to the east of the site. I'll just get I can see some confused faces looking at me, so I'll just get the slide up. Sorry, my mouse is not behaving. Okay. So the drainage runs from west to east, and we have Glebe Road is here to the south, and it's going to the drainage pond and the wetland area to the east. So it's being taken away from Glebe Road. Also, the Lead Flood Authority have raised no objection to it, and there's conditions requiring the further details, which will be reviewed by the Lead Flood Authority team. In terms of comments that it's not in a sustainable location, it is an allocated site under policy H6 of the local plan. It was assessed at local plan stage. It is considered to be a sustainable location for this development under the local plan requirements. And just a couple of slides to give members an idea. This is the application site here. The walking distance to Tesco's Express, depending on what route you take, would be, according to Google Maps, 15 minutes to 18 minutes, depending on what route you take. And to the village hall, it's also a similar distance. In terms of the comments regarding public rights of way, the developer is making a contribution, as I set out on my obligation slide, to the public right of way, which is required under the local plan requirements, which is £430 per dwelling, which is specifically identified as funding that's required to improve public rights of way in and around Litchfield-Matravis. And in terms of the concerns with regards to the pavements, again, there are improvements secured to increase the pavement width along the application site to 2 metres, consistent 2 metres, because it's currently not consistent 2 metres. And just finally, in terms of Councillor Starr's comments, in terms of the cycling and the footpaths, I believe that would have to be a request made to Dorset Council. Again, the developer is providing a contribution towards public footpaths in the Litchfield-Matravis area as part of the infrastructure delivery plan. Yeah, and also, yes, that was it. I think I was just going to defer to Susan for any points in terms of highways, traffic calming or anything.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, Susan Hetherington, representing the Highway Authority. The applicant submitted a transport assessment as part of the application to look at the various traffic and highways implications. The development can only mitigate for its own impact, and actually providing traffic calming along there wouldn't be appropriate in this vicinity. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We have any committee members with any questions? Some Skeets?
Good morning, Councillor Skeets from West Wallsend, Three-Legged Cross. My question relates to the Sang, which seems a considerable distance away from the development, and I wondered whether that actually meets our expectations in Dorset and the NPPF. And I thought that the suggestion by the local councillor about cycleway might help to alleviate the distance and the problem, but I don't know the area well enough to understand where that would be tracking and whether it was even possible. So perhaps you could explain the thoughts around that and whether it's possible to include it.
Right, through you, Chair. Yes, so the Sang is to the north. I've just put up a slide where you can see the walking distances. The Sang serves 3 sites Blaney's Corner, Flowers and Flowers Grove, which are closer to the Sang up here, and the Wareham Road site before members today. So the Wareham Road site is the one that's furthest from it, but it is set out in the policy allocation of H6 that this Sang would serve all three application sites. As I said, I've shown the potential walking routes to the Sang on this slide, where you'd have to walk through the existing Littimer Travers village, and then there is a public right of way that leads to the Sang off Huntick Road, which you can take. And also to point out, the Sang provides 8 car parking spaces if required. So the Sang's already been approved, and development has commenced to ensure this permission secured.
Could I come back and just say that I thought Sang was a suitable alternative natural green space, so therefore its proximity to the actual development is quite important. And 20 minutes, which is what you've just shown me, is a considerable distance. And I'm just sort of trying to think in terms of families living there, what impact that would have on the play of young people, to be honest, because it's so far away, and whether wherever parents would allow anyone down that road to do it. So I have concerns on that. But if you say it meets the requirements, it meets the requirements.
Sorry if I could come back, Chair. And on the site itself, there's play space, there's significant open space. I believe the consultation with Natural England on the Sang, when it was all, the Sang again has been approved and it is under the allocation. What was agreed with Natural England with the Sang, while it's further away from furthest Wareham Road development is furthest from it, the on-site provision on Wareham Road provides some mitigation in itself. So it's not like it's a development with no open space and no play space. If they do want to venture further afield, the Sang facility is there and agreed with Natural England.
Okay.
Thank you, and just Sang is not a play area. It's an alternative to walking on the common. Okay.
Yeah, it's a suitable alternative natural green space. It doesn't generally provide play spaces. It's a walking space. It's generally geared towards dog walkers to avoid dog walkers going to a protected site where they would cause disruption to protected species and potentially damage the site, etc.
Thanks, Mary. Councillor Ezard.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Beryl-Ezard, Wareham Ward. I am aware of this area quite well. Just to mention about the Sang, it is a long way away from the site, the development site. But remember, the development site itself has got quite a lot of green space in it and a meadow. What I would question is, with 95 houses, and I don't believe Litchett has got any allotments. You talk about herb gardens and meadows and their things. Also, for sustainability and resilience, I would think with climate change, things like orchards and, the provision of allotments would have been a good idea. Is that not mentioned at all? And also, there is quite a lot of green space there. But as one of the Glebe Road residents said, the barrier between them, where they've been there a very long time, and the new houses which are on a rise from them, there is a few trees along the border there. Is there any reason why we couldn't put in a better kind of covering hedge or trees? Is that not something they would provide, or is it just, I see on some of the plans that they've got fences instead of the close board fencing, instead of hedges? I would have thought hedges which were more climate change acceptable. other thing is about the pavement going into the village. I would say that although the highways have said there's no reason to actually improve that, it is narrow, and I think there needs to be some sort of improvement along there. But then I think the parish council could approach highways to improve that. Certainly the cycleway that was mentioned several times, connecting up with Hunting Road, is something that really should be going into, and I think that there is a provision in there for doing that. But I would have liked to see that on the plan, where the cycleway would connect up with Fox Hills Road, actually from the plan, and that I'm not sure whether Fox Hills Road is adjacent to it or not. Could you just tell us that? So there's a few points there. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. So thank you, Naomi.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on your points of allotments, they weren't a requirement in the local plan. Other allocated sites in the local plan, particularly around Wimborne, where they were required, they have been included, but it hasn't formed part of this allocation. And it's normally something, if it was required, it would be part of the local plan allocation. I can say that each dwelling has its own garden. So in terms of even there's a 1 and 2 bed flat, which are the 2 bed below and 1 bed above. Each dwelling has its own garden, so at least people have their own amenity space. In terms of the boundaries, right. So I'm just getting my boundary slide up. So yes, transport fencing along Glebe Road. There is, as I mentioned, some existing hedging in some of the properties along Glebe Road. You can see some of them on this slide here. Some tree planting is provided. It's generally in the public realm. If hedging was to be provided along these boundaries, that's it within the ownership of the person who owns that house. So it doesn't necessarily mean it would be retained. So we couldn't guarantee that hedging put into gardens would be retained, because you can remove that without planning permission. So closed board fencing is proposed along the Glebe Road boundary. And then in terms of pavements, this is the slide. There will be highway improvements as set out in this slide. So this, the footway along the development site will be improved to be a consistent 2 meters wide, which is a requirement for a footway width. And again, the hedging is being removed and set back behind the footway. And other improvements, there is a infrastructure delivery plan which includes Litchard and Travis. And again, the developer is paying a contribution per dwelling towards the improvement of footpaths in the Litchard and Travis area. In terms of linking to a path on Fox Hills Road is to the east of the development. The developer can only provide within the red line boundary. So, and there's no requirement for them to connect to other roads beyond the development and providing appropriate access for the development itself.
Thank you. Can I just ask one more question? When I was looking at the development in the houses, I know that on some developments, the chimneys on the houses, are they for real? Are they actual chimneys that come down into the living room? So you could have log burners, or I know they're talking about heat pumps and all the wonderful things for climate change, which is wonderful. Or are they just artificial?
They're decorative, but they will be, I've seen white developments, and the chimneys are brick built rather than polystyrene type chimneys that are added. But so I'm just trying to get one of the there we go. So they're in modern houses nowadays. Chimneys are generally decorative rather than serving a fireplace. Yeah, and it adds interest to the roofscape. So we have some with chimneys and some without chimneys on this development.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Naomi. Any further questions or indeed observations? Members of the commission. Anybody wish to speak? No. I would just in terms of the soft landscaping, there's two conditions that address that. So that have to be soft landscaping and submitted in advance, is that correct? And the same applies to surface water drainage.
So we have a landscaping strategy plan and landscaping strategy document, which the council landscape officer is satisfied with, but we just need a few more details, and there's a planting strategy, etc. So we applied a condition to acquire those additional details that the landscape officer wants prior to the damp level, so before certain courses, and we require those details. And in terms of drainage, one of them is pre-commencement, and one of them is the management details. I think it's sorry, I've forgotten which one. One moment. Yeah, one is pre-commencement, so the drainage details is pre-commencement, and the drainage management is pre-application.
Okay. Got no further comments or questions. Do we have anyone wishing to make a proposal?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I've listened to the arguments, I've listened to the public's comments for and against, and I'm looking at the application, and I think it's a well thought out application. It fits with the Purbeck local plan as an allocated site, so I'll move the recommendation as set out in the report, which is to grant.
That's a proposal to grant. Councillor Power, just confirm that's the proposal.
I did say the proposal was to grant as set out in the officer's report, Chairman.
Yeah. Do we have a second there? Councillor Sally House.
I'm very content to second that proposal. I think it's when it's built out, I think it will be good quality. What we're looking for, good design. Quite an open site. We're already familiar with the style of quiet construction, and I'd be very content for this. I would just say, as an addition to that, if the Litchfield Travers Parish Council, which clearly there is an issue on the Wareham Road with regards to speed, they could pursue a reduction in the speed limit on that road. So that might be something they wish to take forward. But yes, I'm content to set the proposal as per the officer recommendation.
Okay, thank you. We've had a proposal, we've had a seconder. Before we go to the vote, does anyone else wish to contribute? No? Okay. All those in favour of the proposal to grant as per the recommendation, please show. 1, 2, 3. That sounds like it's unanimous. Then we've got 6/21 6/2021 for O2 please. Thank you. Thank you, members. Move on to the next item.
I'd rather, yes.
Still going on
This week.
Do you need Susan?
the next item. Is 2019
I'll just listen anyway, 'cause it's one of my sites.
Yeah. Land north of West Lane, Stoke, where. So once we change over our presenters.
Yes, Chairman, I'm the local member for this particular application, but I haven't actually come completely open. I haven't made a decision about one way or the other about this, so I can come to the meeting completely open. I know that my co-councillor, Councillor Ryan Holloway, has put in an objection. He won't be attending. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But you're happy that you're not predetermined in any way?
No, I know that it's been going on a long time, but it's there is other reasons that I think that this is something that I've got to keep my mind open about, and there is a need, and I think that's what I'm thinking about, standing back and thinking, how do I look at this? So I've made no determination at all. Thank you.
That's fine. In that case, you'll continue your part in the meeting.
Thank you.
We have the presentation is going to be by Thomas Wild. And when you're ready, Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The application is application 2019-0639, which is an outline application for up to 15 residential dwellings, site reprofiling and associated infrastructure, with all matters reserved apart from vehicular access from West Lane on land north of West Lane, Stowborough. The application was previously considered by this committee in August 2021, so the application is being re-reported now. Just a very brief update for you members from the report. The agents pointed out that there was an error in paragraph 5.4 with reference to the creation of a pond, which was included in error in reference to an earlier version of the scheme. So that doesn't now form part of the scheme, but thus this doesn't have any effect on the recommendation or the proposed conditions. So just some background first off for you members. The Eastern Area Planning Committee previously resolved to grant planning permission for the development subject to the completion of a legal agreement in August 2021. Following that resolution, the legal agreement was progressed and eventually completed on the 29th of June 2022. In the intervening period, unfortunately, however, Natural England published updated advice for nutrient neutrality within the hydrological catchment of Poole Harbour, which meant that planning permission could not be issued unless the development was shown to be neutral for phosphorus at the time. The Purbeck Local Plan was then adopted on the 18th of July 2024 before a decision could be issued, meaning it's now necessary to bring the application back before the committee in view of the changes to the policy framework and some changes to the scheme that have been necessary to address the evolving position with regards to nutrient neutrality. So just some context of the application site. The application site is shown outlined in red on the plan that's on the screen at the moment. It's located on the northern side of West Lane, which I'm just indicating there, on the western side of Stowborough. This plan also shows the location of the site in relation to Wareham, which is to the north. The site is situated outside of the settlement boundary of Stowborough, which is immediately to the east of the development site, which includes the housing here on Hollow Oak Road and West Lane. And the site is located within the Dorset National Landscape. And to the west of the site, on the opposite side of the A351, is the Bog Lane Sang. And just to mention that the applicant owns the land to the north of the site, which is outlined in blue, and there is a public right-of-way which runs to the north of the site between Stowborough and the Bog Lane Sang. This aerial photo shows the site in the context of the immediate context of Stowborough. we can see to the east of the site is Hollow Oak Road, residential development, and further to the east we have Stowborough Baptist Church and Stowborough Primary School to the northeast, and then immediately to the west is the A351 Swanage Road. Just moving forward to some photographs of the site. This is the application site looking into it from the southern edge, from the location of the access. On this photograph, we can see the A351 would run to the left beyond the trees, and then Hollow Oak Road, it would be to the right. This is looking beyond the boundary of the site to the north. You can see from this plan, from this photograph, sorry, that the land levels fall away towards the north. And this is from a similar position looking south towards the site entrance. We have the A351 on the right-hand side beyond the trees, and the West Lane sits just beyond this hedgerow, which forms the southern boundary of the site. Right. This is the northwestern corner of the site, showing land in the ownership of the applicant. Again, the A351 sits beyond this tree line, and we can see that the land levels fall away towards the north once again. And then this is looking back in the opposite direction, with the northwestern corner of the site within the ownership of the applicant, the A351 beyond the tree line, and the land levels climbing up towards the south. This is the land to the north of the application site, which is within the applicant's ownership. Again, we can see the land levels falling away towards the north in public right of way. And then this is from within the site looking towards the nearest neighbour, which is Meadow Cottage on West Lane. This is the nearest residential property to the site, and we can see from this photograph it has a side elevation facing onto the site. That's a blank elevation with a hipped roof, and that property is a chalet bungalow. And we can just see that property on the left-hand side of this photograph. This photograph is West Lane looking towards the village, and to point out that at present there's currently no pedestrian footpath on this side of West Lane. This is the junction of Hollow Oak Road with West Lane. There is a pavement on Hollow Oak Road which comes out, but then it terminates at the edge of that development site, and so there would be a pavement provided along that route. This is the point at which the existing pavements within Stowborough terminate on West Lane. We have a bus stop here, and this is just outside the Baptist Church. This shows the route of the public footpath along to the north of the site from Stowborough to the Bog Lane Sang. And then this is looking from that public footpath north towards Wareham, which you can see in the distance across the floodplain. This is the public footpath connection to the Bog Lane Sang, just crossing the A351. And then this is looking along the A351. We have the existing cycleway pavement along the side of the road there. And then this is a bit further down where the A351 joins West Lane. And then completing the trip around the edge of the site. This is the end of West Lane looking back towards the entrance to the site, which will be on the left. So the proposal is for 15 dwellings with all matters reserved apart from access at this stage. This is the applicant's parameter plan, which shows the area shaded in orange as the proposed area of residential development, with land to the north and west in the ownership of the applicant. Land to the north is showing some tree planting, which forms part of their nutrient mitigation strategy. This plan shows the illustrative master plan of the site. It shows a mix of one-bedroom apartments shown in the light blue, two-bedroom houses in the light purple, three-bedroom houses in the yellowy green colour here, 4-bedroom houses in orange, and then 6-bedroom houses in the pinky red colour. The layout includes 6 units of affordable housing to be provided on site. And just to pick up that this indicative layout has been informed by a number of constraints on the site, including a sewer easement which runs through the eastern side, and a dark corridor for biodiversity mitigation along the western side, along the tree belt. The proposed access is unchanged from the previous consideration of the application by this committee. It's shown on plan at the moment, so it's a relatively simple priority Belfast junction being created with pavements either side, a tactile paving crossing, and the bottom plan here shows visibility displays out towards the junction with the A351 and along west. Moving on to access outside of the site, as you'll have seen from the site photographs earlier, there is no pavement at the moment along the northern side of West Lane connecting to Stowborough. As part of this application, provision will be made for a new pedestrian route, which was provided on highway land connecting into the village. It's along the route that's shown green on the plan on your screens at the moment. This is to be secured by a Grampian-style condition and agreement under Section 278 of the Highways Act. Just touching on flood risk, the application site is in flood zone 1, so the plan here shows flood zones 2 and 3, which are to the north, and these are areas of surface water flooding in the vicinity of the site. Again, the site is not directly affected by surface water flooding. There is a protected tree on the eastern boundary of the site, and consultation with the council's tree team has raised no objections, subject to a condition requiring detailed arboricultural method statement to be submitted. Here we have the relationship of the site with the Bog Lane Sang, which is shown hatched in red, with the application site here. And the routes available to the Sang are shown on this slide. It's proposed that there will be a newly created footpath through the land in the applicant's ownership to the north, which will connect to the existing footpath network that we've seen the photographs of, and also access would also be available along the existing network of pavements that we've seen with crossing into the Sang from the north there. Following the withdrawal of the reduction in nitrogen reduction in Poole Harbour SPD in September 2024, the applicant has needed to identify proposals to mitigate the impact of development on nutrient levels within Poole Harbour. In this case, this is being achieved through a combination of temporary credits for short-term mitigation to 2030 and land use change at off-site locations, which are shown on the map that's on the screen now. You may or may not be able to see, but we have two sites. Site 1 here is the land adjacent to the site to the north, where woodland is to be expanded and the land is to be taken out of grazing. And site 2 is land south of the Burnbake campsite, where the land is again to be taken out of grazing and to be planted with woodland to achieve long-term nitrogen reduction from that land. The temporary credits are to be secured through a planning condition, and the land use change will be included in a new legal agreement. The changes to the nutrient mitigation position have necessitated a change to the quantum of affordable housing on site. We have a comparison on screen at the moment of the current proposal versus the original proposal. The current proposal is for the provision of 6 units of affordable housing on site, which does represent a policy compliant contribution in accordance with the local plan. Previously, there was some viability testing carried out to maximise affordable housing provision on the site, because at the time the site was being promoted and justified as a rural exception site, and that resulted in a contribution of 7 units on site and a commuted sum of £82,500 which represented a 50% contribution. The rural exception site justification is no longer required for this site, as the principle of development is now supported through policy H8 of the local plan, which allows for the development of small sites on the edge of existing settlements. So this slide just covers the consideration of the key issues. The conclusions on each of the matters are largely unchanged from the previous committee. The main changes are the principle of development. As I mentioned, the development of the site is now supported by policy H8 of the local plan, as well as policy 4 of the neighbourhood plan. It is noted that the neighbourhood plan references local opposition to the development of the site. However, that opposition relates primarily to the lack of pedestrian facilities on West Lane, which the proposal would address, and the neighbourhood plan does not seek to allocate any specific sites and doesn't specifically restrict development in this location. It's also worth mentioning on that point that the committee previously resolved to grant planning permission for the site in the context of the neighbourhood plan, and the local plan since then has only served to strengthen the support for the principle of development. It changed to affordable housing, which remains acceptable as there would be a policy compliant contribution. And in respect of nutrient neutrality, there's a bespoke mitigation now proposed, whereas previously that would have been managed through community infrastructure levy. And finally, just to mention that the biodiversity surveys have been updated by the applicant, so there is an updated ecological impact appraisal which would be secured by condition. Therefore, the recommendation is to delegate authority to the Service Manager for Development Management and Enforcement and the Development Management Area Manager East to either grant planning permission subject to the completion of the Section 106 agreement, or to refuse if that's not completed by the 8th of April 2026 or such time as may be agreed as an extended period. We have the recommended conditions with the full text of those quoted in the report. Those are largely the same as previously reported, with some slight with the addition of a condition for nutrient credits, which is condition 5, and a slight change to the wording of the Grampian condition for the provision of the off-site highways works. And just for completeness, this is the proposed reason for refusal if the Section 106 were not completed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Thomas. We have one speaker on this, who is the applicant which is Martin Miller. So, probably know the drill, but if you go to the desk and press the correct button, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. I'm Martin Miller from Toronto. I'm the planning agent for this application, which, as you've heard, seeks outline permission for 15 homes, which 6 are affordable. This application was submitted to Purbeck District Council in November 2019, following 3 years of pre-application discussions with council officers. This committee resolved to approve the application in August 2021, and a Section 106 legal agreement was completed and signed by all parties in June 22. However, as a result of the introduction of nutrient neutrality, Dorset Council was unable to issue the decision notice. In May 24, Natural England removed the need for housing developments draining into Poole Harbour to provide phosphorus mitigation. And following the council's decision in September last year to withdraw the nitrogen mitigation SPD, the community infrastructure levy is no longer able to be used to mitigate nitrogen impacts. So we've therefore spent the last 12 months agreeing a complicated and quite expensive nitrogen mitigation solution with Natural England and council officers, as you've just heard. Our client is the Remston Estate, whose day-to-day business is providing housing for local people in the Wareham area. The estate started out on this journey to provide as many affordable housing units on this piece of land as possible. That remains their objective. However, since the pandemic, build costs and the costs of utilities connections have risen exponentially. The community infrastructure levy covering the Purbeck area hasn't been revised since 2014 and has increased significantly through indexation. And nutrient neutrality has become an unexpected and expensive issue to resolve. This development only works in viability terms if the landowner makes their land available to a developer for nothing, which is something I've never come across before. She would like to provide more affordable housing units, but it just doesn't work financially. So as you've heard from the case officer, our application complies with national and local planning policies, and approval today would allow us to move forward to the reserved matters stage. Despite the challenges that have been thrown at us over the last 9 years, this application is an innovative means through which to increase the supply of affordable housing in the county, and consequently is of interest to other large estate owners across Dorset who've been tracking its progress. I therefore ask you to endorse the positive recommendation before you this morning and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thomas.
Nothing to add to that.
Okay. Tony, Councillor Coons.
Morning, Chairman. Councillor Tony Coons, Burwood Ward. I remember this application when it came to the previous committee. My question relates to the section 106 that was signed. Does that still hold because this is now a different application? Does it roll forward? How do we capture everything that was agreed in that previous legal agreement as we move forward with this application?
If through your chair, yes. So this is the same application. So the previous legal agreement was signed and completed. The intention, which we've had advice from the council's legal team on, would be essentially to produce a new legal agreement which would supersede the previous legal agreement. But the intention would be to capture all of the same requirements with any additional requirements in terms of the nutrient neutrality and then the updated affordable housing contribution requirements.
Thank you, Chairman. Providing that everything is rolled forward with the new additions, I'm happy to move approval.
Skeets.
Andy Skeets, West Moors and Three-Legged Cross, happy to second.
That's how it is.
I think I would be content with that. I would just like to add an amendment to it, if it's possible. Properties 10 and 11, the two shown in pink towards the, I think, is that the north of the site? It's up, certainly, are 6-bed homes. There's no uplift in parking provision from a 4-bed house to a 6-bed house. There is plenty of room on the site to add an additional parking space, and there's very little opportunity with the parking spaces and the properties that are there for off-road parking. More than 43% of the ward profile in that area have 2 or more cars. So I think it would be helpful at this stage, whether the applicant wanted to make it a double garage and 2 parking spaces or just another parking space at the end. The likelihood of there being more than 2 cars in a 6-bed home, I just think that would make it a bit more future-proof. On the basis of that amendment being successful, I'm very content with the original motion.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to point out on this application that it is outlined only at this stage, so full details would be forthcoming through a reserved matters application.
Reserved matters.
What I would suggest that we could do at this stage is include an informative on any consent that would refer to the encouragement of the enhanced parking provision.
Okay, with that, yeah, great. Okay. So in terms of the proposal, how to second your requirements?
We have to accept this.
Yeah, I've got. I also wanted to just ask a couple of questions myself. One of which is to do with the neighbourhood plan. Now we've heard that there's no policy in the neighbourhood. saying don't do this, but the text of the plan was quite strong that there should be no development along this road. How do we reconcile those aspects?
Yeah, thank you. In terms of the neighbourhood plan, the neighbourhood plan does encourage, well, does say that there is opposition to the development of the sites. As I mentioned, the opposition is on the basis of the lack of pedestrian provision on West Lane, principally, which is a local concern, and that is something that is intended to be addressed directly by the proposals through the off-site highways works. The local plan, which is more recent than the neighbourhood plan, also includes general provision for the development of sites on the edge of settlements such as this. So in terms of the principle, that's acceptable. The Highways Authority has no objection to proposed access and routes and has agreed to the principle of the off-site highways upgrades as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sard.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the proposal is preempting what I wanted to ask. I know that area does flood quite a lot towards the bypass and actually floods onto the corner of the bypass with West Lane. And I just wonder, there you can see where the blue area is and lighter blue is. And there is a chance, quite a few times a year, that there should be some mitigation by the developer to make sure there's a big ditch and a bund or something behind the houses on the on the side of the bypass, the A351, to ensure that there is no flooding back onto the site. Because if you look on the south side of West Lane, there is a floodplain there, quite visible on the plan. And I think some mitigation ought to be put in, because I know in the past there's been a lot of talk about that flooding on that corner. And I think it needs some sort of proper ditching and even a bund at the back of the houses, so that it means that the flooding cannot run back towards West Lane and to the east, as it were. So is that something that we can put in as a condition? I'm quite happy with the layout. I mean, it looks good. I think the question that Councillor Sari House made about extra parking for the bigger houses is a valid one as well. But I certainly, some of the questions that the parish council and my councillor was making are certainly about the schooling and things like that were saturated and it was full capacity. Well, I've made inquiries and the school has got places and it's not to full capacity, so that's not a problem. And certainly when I look at the local plan going forward, there is no other options in the village for housing. So I think that this, just on the edge, and only because of the mitigation of the the hitches and the extra regulations that have been put in the last few years, has actually, to a certain extent, really delayed this coming forward. So, and I do think that the SANG is quite close by. It's worked very well. The parish council looks after it, and it works very well. So, for any of the other housing, which is put in for Westgate, which is back into Wareham, so it's quite a long way away. So that actually has worked very well. So yeah, my worries are pretty well put aside, except for the flooding condition that I would like to see some sort of provision put in there to avoid flooding on that corner and, coming into the properties, certainly on the west side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, if I may, through you. So we've got this is the modelled surface water flood risk on the screen now. As we can see, that the surface water flood risk doesn't directly affect the site, but yes, there is modelled flood risk in that corner. We do have, if I just flick forward to the conditions slide, we do have conditions requiring the detailed surface water management plan to be submitted and approved by the in consultation with the Lead Local Flood Authority. The Lead Local Flood Authority has commented on the application and has no objections, is content with the proposed strategy. And if I may, I might just share something else that I have. The surface water strategy that has been submitted for consideration does include the realignment of a surface water ditch as shown in this location. This is indicative, of course, at this stage, given that the application is in outline, but so there is an existing surface water ditch that is proposed to be relocated, and then they're showing attenuation on site to manage surface water. So yes, I think to a degree that those points are already in train and will be carried forward through the detailed design process.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just on that, on the slide where you showed the surface water, there's plugs indicated top and bottom of the slide, so coming off the main road or going into the village. So the properties down in the slides there. That's the kind of slide showing the
it's not letting me go very quickly.
There. I looked at it, that whole section, that there's deep blue water
so
on the main road, and then at the top there's more flooding.
Yeah.
What problems does that currently present to houses in that section of the village?
Is it this area in the northeast that we
well, it's both. If you look, you've got floods at the north, and then down to the junction with the main road. So if the water's deep, then you're effectively cut off.
Yeah. So firstly, the application is only to mitigate proposals are only to mitigate the impact of the development and ensure the development remains safe. So which it does, because it would have safe egress. This area of blue is the 1 in 1,000 year event. So this surface water mapping is showing the 1 in 30, 1 in 100, and 1 in 1,000. So that is really only the very most extreme rainfall events showing to that extent, with much lesser flooding in more regular events.
Okay. I'm curious about these 1 in 1,000 year events. When was the last? When was that road last flooded? This part of the question.
Probably. I don't know. I can't answer
that. Chair, I can say it's 1 in a 10-year event. Even quicker that's across the causeway coming into Wareham from the South Bridge across to the village of Sobra. And I would say almost every other year you get flooding and that river is closed. So, and the parish council, the Arn Parish Council, has got flood defences that it puts up at the cottages there, and they are very active in joining in with the Dorset flood group, and they've actually got the barriers which they stash away, And when there's a warning, they're out there putting them up and got the pumps and everything. They've got everything that will mitigate. The only thing they haven't got is the necessary actually permission. They can't give themselves permission to stop the traffic. They have to wait for highways and somebody at the top in Dorset Council to give them permission to actually stop the traffic going through there, even though it might be up over your sills. But that's the only grump that they've got to me about stuff. But otherwise, yes, it does happen more often than 1 in 100, certainly. I would say once every other year. But coming into the village itself, at the junction where the school is, which is, with West Lane, is quite rare. It doesn't usually sort of come up the incline from the pub. The pub's been underwater, I know, but that is probably 1 in 100 instances. But certainly knowing the area, the causeway floods quite often. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Okay. Councillor Sally House.
Yeah, Councillor Sarah House from the Farm Ward. Thank you, Thomas. So just called up exactly the same 1 in 30. I think it's a bit deceptive because I don't know, in my mind, I would have thought the darker the blue, the deeper the water, but it's actually not that at all. It's simply time, isn't it? And actually, interestingly, when you layer the historic maps from data that have happened already, there's no impact on the site at all. I appreciate that might change with climate change. However, whatever is happening further up the road or on the causeway, and it is a route to a business I had in Swanage, so I'm very familiar with the journey. It actually doesn't impact on this site, so I have no problems with this, and I would be content for this to be approved as per the officer recommendation.
Thank you. My point of raising the flooding was not that it affects the site, but it affects people living on the site, and indeed people who live elsewhere in the village. And I was curious as to what might be done to mitigate the drainage in that area generally. Now, that's not a reason for refusing this application, but it's something I think the council needs to look at going forward. All right, anyone else wish to comment? No? We've had a proposal. We've had a seconder. Those in favour of the proposal, which is to approve as per recommendation, raise your hand. With the informative. Again, unanimous. So 6202, let's say 2019 0639, landlord of West Lane, Silverware, is granted. We have no urgent items. We have no exempt business. Before I close the meeting, I just request councillors to stay for a little while after the meeting, because we're going to have some information about appearances that's been going on with business. So, that advisor, the meeting is now closed.